guys, everybody out there. Welcome to the third episode of the 2019 Rut Report on Realtree Facebook Live. So we're super excited about this new resource that we've got out there for you guys, and it's not really new. It's something that we've been doing for a few years now, but this is the second year that we've had it on Realtree's Facebook page and had it as Facebook Live. So it's a pretty cool resource that we have, and it's something that we'll continue doing. But this is something that is going to progress. This is going to keep going throughout the fall and the winter. This is going to go all the way basically till the end of deer season. So we're pretty pumped about that. It's a great resource, and it's an interactive resource. This is something that we hope you guys will interact with us. We want your rut reports, what you're seeing in your neck of the woods. We want to, throw some questions out there. If you have any questions about, the tactics to use for the time of year, or what the deer are doing right then and right there in your neck of the woods, throw those questions out there, and we'll do our best to answer those. But without that, with that said, we're going to jump into today's report, which is brought to you by Thiessens. And if you haven't checked out their stuff, definitely do so. There's a link in the description. Check out their midweight stuff. That stuff is priced really well, and this is the time of year to be using it. So we're finally getting some cooler weather the last couple of weeks, and definitely check out Thiessens midweight stuff, even their heavyweight stuff. They also have some really good layering and some good base layers, such as what I have on here. So check that stuff out. But with that said, as you noticed, we started a little bit later tonight. We generally start at 7 Central Time, 8 Eastern, but we had some guys that were in the tree this afternoon. They were taking advantage of that killer cold front that moved through basically today and will be continuing to pass through tomorrow and Friday. So I can't blame them for that. But some of the guys, some of our Realtree 365 guests that were going to be getting out of the stand a little bit later tonight and just could not quite make, the 7 o'clock start. So we started a little later, but our normal time is 7 Central, 8 Eastern. But that will fluctuate a little bit throughout the season, but that's pretty much, that's going to be pretty much the norm. So sometimes we might start a little bit later, depending on the scenario, such as tonight. But jumping into the southeast, we'll start with Alabama. Not much rut activity going on in Alabama. There's really the first rut that you see anywhere in the state is late November. You'll start, some of the eastern states, kind of the east central counties there in Alabama will kind of start and get going kind of in late to early December, late November to early December, and then there's a little pocket up in the northwestern part of the state that also starts around that time. So there's not much activity rut-wise going on in Alabama. That said, some rut sign is starting to pick up. There's some rubs that's starting to appear on the landscape. Scrapes are starting to show up as well. So Alabama, while you're still a long ways away from seeing your rut, just know that the deer actually are starting to show a little bit of action, a little bit of rut sign starting to appear on the landscape. That's pretty much all we have for Alabama today. Moving over to Georgia. Georgia is starting to see just a touch. I talked to Michael Pitts earlier today. He said that the deer are starting to get a little frisky. They're starting to feel it a little bit. So, and that's in Harris County. That's where he is, Harris County, Georgia. But as far as where the state is seeing the best rut action, where they're seeing the most action right now, that's in the southeastern corner. That's basically the border counties down there on the southeastern side. That's Chatham, Bryan, Liberty, McIntosh, Glenn, Camden. They started seeing a little bit of rut activity around the October 10th to 12th, but it's really kind of starting to come to a head. It's not quite peaked yet, but it's definitely getting there. Some other states that's really starting to show good rut sign, good scraping activity, good rubbing activity is Effingham, Long, Wayne, Pierce, Brantley, Ware, Charleston, Cinch, Eccles, Lanier, and Atkinson. Those counties that we have not talked about those yet, but they're starting to kind of show a little bit more life as well. Probably won't see a peak rut there for another week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, but starting to see a little action in that neck of the woods too. Now the rest of the state, of course, as you progress, up into the northwestern part, it gets later and later. So you guys, while you're probably still focusing mostly on those early season bed to feed patterns right now. With that said, that's pretty much all we have for Georgia tonight. Moving on to Arkansas. For Arkansas, basically, I checked in with the DNR there. They told us right now, the whole state, there's anywhere in Arkansas right now that's seeing any kind of peak rut activity. However, there are some counties that historically get started a little bit earlier than the rest. Those are Washington, Madison, Randolph, Izard, Searcy, Independence, Craighead, Claiborne, Van Buren, Pope, Conway, Logan, Sebastian, Yale, Saline, Garland, Hot Spring, Clark, and Nevada counties. Those counties tend to get started just a little bit earlier than the rest of the state. Those are really kind of central counties, and some of them are kind of northern as well. But those counties will get started first in Arkansas for that state. Now, even those really won't kind of come to a head until the very end of October, very early November. But that's kind of something to think about in Arkansas. The contacts that I've talked to, they have said that scraping activity has started to pick up, rubbing activity has started to pick up statewide, and it's just like anything else. That state will definitely be a early November peak for parts, and it will be as late as early December for other parts. But definitely know that things are starting to pick up. You're still focusing on those early season bed feed patterns in Arkansas as well, but you just might catch a deer working a scrape in daylight. You just never know, but things are starting to pick up a little bit in Arkansas. Now, jumping back over to the eastern side a little bit, some people talking about South Carolina. Right now, the counties in South Carolina that's the best are the coastal counties. Rut-wise, they're the best right now. There was parts of Charleston, Colleton, Beaufort. Those counties are traditionally see the earliest rut in South Carolina. And parts of those, especially the parts of those counties that's closest to the coast, generally sees a peak rut somewhere between October 15th and October 20th. So you guys are right in the middle of it, or at least should be. Talking to the South Carolina DNR, South Carolina Wildlife Resources, they kind of have expressed the same. But even parts of those counties that I just mentioned can sometimes rut as late as early November. So it kind of just depends on where you're at, very localized rut. The rest of the state in South Carolina, rubs are really starting to pick up, scrapes are picking up too. We're still a couple weeks out for the really good stuff, for the heart, 95% of South Carolina. There is a small little pocket up in northwestern South Carolina, parts of Oconee, Pickens, and Greenville counties that will basically see a peak rut in late November, early December. But for the most part, the bulk of South Carolina, you're seeing a first week of November type rut, and it's going to be a couple weeks before it happens. That said, as I've mentioned for some other states, rub activity, scrape activity really started to pick up and get better. All right, moving on to North Carolina. Getting my notes pulled up here. Talking to my sources there, again, it has to do with the coastal counties. The coastal counties in the southeast are seeing the most rut activity right now. The same went for Georgia and South Carolina. That's also the case for North Carolina. There's a couple of counties in here that generally see a little bit of early rut activity. Washington, Tyrell, Dare, Hyde counties, Carteret counties, even down around Columbus and Brunswick counties. Those counties typically see the earliest rut activity based on historical rut data and based on what the reports are from that state right now and things that have been expressed to me that seems to be on track this year. Now, some of the other counties that we can kind of start paying attention to and start looking at and thinking about seeing some rut activity within the next couple of weeks are Beaufort, Jones, even Harnett County, and maybe some of the other areas that's mixed in there. Those counties might start to see some rut activity within the next couple of weeks. But really, the only county still in North Carolina seeing any kind of rut activity right now, and it's really not even peak rut, is Tyrell, Hyde, Dare, Carteret, and Columbus and Brunswick too. They're seeing the best action, even though it's not quite where you want it to be yet. It's not quite peak rut. The rest of the state, it spans really deep into winter. Some of those counties, especially on the western half of the state there in North Carolina, may not rut until, mid-December, early December. So obviously still a ways out for you guys too. Moving on to Florida. Florida, it's probably, it sees the earliest rut in the country, July. Some deer start rutting in deep South Florida in July, late July to be early August. But that's the lower third of the peninsula. Obviously, that rut is over with. The lower third of the Florida peninsula is done. It kind of wrapped up around the end of August, 1st of September. But where we're really looking at now is the upper 2/3 of the Florida peninsula, with the exception of about a 80 to 100 square mile radius around Winter Haven, which, ruts, depending on where you're at, anywhere from early November to as late as February. So with the exception of that radius around Winter Haven, 80 to 100 mile radius around Winter Haven, the rest of the northern 2/3 of the Florida peninsula are actually starting to see some pretty good rut activity, and that can continue all the way into the beginning of November. Now, if you get up into the panhandle of Florida, don't expect any kind of rut activity up there until at least early December, depending on where you're at, and it could be as late as February in some places too. But we'll be talking about you guys later on in the report in a few weeks, couple months. That's pretty much all we got for Florida this week. Moving on to Virginia. We're just kind of bouncing around today. Not a lot of rut activity in Virginia right now. Based on reports, we're seeing mostly just some good rub activity and scrape activity starting to show up. Virginia is much like Kentucky and Tennessee in that regard. Sees a pretty traditional, true to form, early November, mid-November rut. But the deer are starting to feel their oats a little bit there in Virginia based on what I'm hearing. So that's all I really have for Virginia right now. There is a cold front passing through, which we're going to talk a little bit more for the Kentucky-Tennessee report, but it kind of affects Virginia as well. We got a cold front that moved through today, so it's really not going to be a weekend type cold front that we've been experiencing for the last couple of reports. That cold front kind of hit midweek this time. But that said, some of the reports I'm seeing is this cold front, even though it's been really good, it's not really produced the deer movement that we expected it to. And it definitely didn't seem to produce the type of deer movement that we saw for the first two cold fronts in October. Which that's not quite, a surprise, but it is a little bit surprising nonetheless. Now, moving over to Kentucky and Tennessee, same there. Kentucky and Tennessee sees historically a rut that falls somewhere in the first 2 weeks of November. Peak breeding, especially in Kentucky, typically falls somewhere between November 10th and 15th as the peak breeding day. And the best action isn't around that peak breeding date. It's always the week 5 to 7 days leading up to that peak breeding date that you really want to be hunting, because things really slow down whenever you hit that peak breeding date for that area or that region. So if you still haven't taken or scheduled your, then you definitely, you definitely want to be able to save those for that time whenever it's going to be the best, which is going to be that week or so leading up to peak breeding. As far as Tennessee goes, Tennessee is much like Kentucky. You don't have quite as condensed of a rut in Tennessee as you do in the bluegrass state, but Tennessee is fairly defined as well, especially the northern 3/4 of the state. You get down there closer to the Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia lines, and the rut can vary just a little bit, but for the bulk of Tennessee and the volunteer state there, you're still looking at a first week of November rut. As far as what the deer are doing right now in Kentucky and Tennessee, based on what I'm seeing, based on my trail camera photos, in the field sightings, reports from everybody else, deer have, the movement's slowed down. Despite this latest cold front that moved through the middle of this week, it's just not quite as good as the activity we saw for the first two cold fronts earlier this month. That said, things are gradually going to start picking up, I think, even though it's been slow for the last week or so, the last 3 to 4 or 5 days especially. I think it's going to start to pick back up as we move deeper into October. As long as we get the weather, I think the deer activity is going to come back. Now, when I say that the deer activity hasn't been good, that doesn't necessarily mean that deer are becoming nocturnal. I just think that the deer are hanging up in cover and moving more in cover. I think the mass crop is actually a little bit heavier than we originally thought it was earlier in the year. I've been hearing some acorns hit the ground here lately that I didn't hear the first 2 weeks of October. So maybe we've had some late drop in some places. I'm not sure. But there's definitely some food sources inside the timber that's holding these deer up. They're not quite making it out into the open in daylight like they were the last couple of weeks of October and definitely back in September. But that's, again, to be expected, not a huge surprise. Moving on to Louisiana. Again, Louisiana, it's like Florida. It's got a wacky rut. It starts in late September and goes all the way through the end of February. Crazy stuff, but it is what it is. Obviously, when you look at the state, it obviously shows a progression as far as where that rut starts and where it finishes at. There are some weird pockets in there that are kind of indescribable, but for the most part, you kind of see that progression across the state, much the same as Florida and some of the other long stretched out ruts such as Alabama in the south. As far as where it's the hottest right now, we're definitely looking at the southwestern corner of Louisiana, the southwestern part of the state. If you're looking at Louisiana, it's a big L. This part of the state is where the best rut activity is in Louisiana right now. There's about a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about a 10 or 11 parish region right there in the southwestern corner of Louisiana that's seeing the best rut activity. Now, some of it's over with there, because it happened back in September or really early October. That said, some of the counties that's seeing the best right now and should see the next, good rut activity for the next few days, or if not the next week to week and a half, include Vermilion County, parts of it, parts of Iberia, parts of Jefferson Davis, parts of Arcadia, parts of Cameron, parts of Caucasian, or parts of Beauregard, and parts of Vernon. Those parishes are, there's some pockets in those that reports are coming out and saying that there's really good rut activity there. Talk to the DNR, they're kind of, expressing the same as well. But the southwestern corner of Louisiana is definitely the hot spot for the moment, and that's going to change as we move deeper into October and the beginning of November. But we'll talk more about that closer to time. Now, to finish up in the southeast, Mississippi. Obviously no rut in Mississippi right now. Mississippi starts in early December, runs through late January, if not the very, very beginning of February in some places. So as far as the activity goes, though, the reports that I've got coming in from some of Realtree's pro staffers, they're saying that basically the deer are definitely in early season patterns, but they're starting to show a little bit of life. They're starting to show and exhibit a little bit more ruddy behavior. Not that they're ready to breed, but deer sparring. Starting to see a little bit of tickling of horns together. A couple of decent, not all out fights, but sparring matches. And rubs and scrapes are starting to show up too. So while the rut is still a long ways out in Mississippi, the deer activity has been good. across the southeast as a whole, just looking at it in general, the deer activity has been good the past week. It's not been great. It's not been as good as it was the first 2 weeks of October, but it's still been decent. So that's pretty much the southeastern report tonight. And we're definitely going to be jumping over to the northeast region here momentarily. I'm going to see who we have with us right now. I think we're going to be getting Josh on here in just a moment. Obviously, we're going to have all of our reporters, but as I said earlier, we have some guests on tonight. That's one of the reasons we started late. We needed to give them time to get out of the tree. I think they're still going to be joining us. I never can promise these things for sure, especially during the hunting season, but I think we're going to be having Josh Sparks on with Midwest Whitetail, the producer, and the guy who basically makes the magic happen with Midwest Whitetail, which you can see on Realtree 365. And we also may be having Mr. Bart Goins on as well, who is part of the team there for Whitetail TV, which is also on Realtree 365. So with that said, we're going to jump over to the northeast region and see if we can get Josh Montgomery's report. The north. I believe we got him. Yeah, we're just about there. I think. While we're waiting on Josh, I'm going to jump back into the comments and see if we got any questions or concerns or any reports. There's a lot of comments here, so definitely going to be some stuff, I think. Chad, we'd like to hunt with you too. How you doing, AJ? Chris, want to know when the rut begins in the southern zone in Georgia. I mean, it depends. Hey, Josh, we're going to jump around with you. I've got a couple of questions that just popped up.
You're good.
And we'll jump into the northeast report. As far as the southern zone in Georgia, it depends on where you're at. Pulling up the historical data here, there's parts of southern Georgia that don't rut until late January. There's parts that's already rutting. I mean, you look at Camden, Glen, and McIntosh, they experience a peak rut right about now. You move over a little further west, Charleston, Ware, Brantley, Atkinson, Lanier, Clint, Cinch, or Clinch. I don't know how that's which one that is. But they typically see a peak rut in the last week of October. Move a little further west, you look at Berrien, Cook, Lowndes, Coffee. Those counties typically see a peak rut sometime around the first week of November, sometime around November 6th, 7th. Keep going further west, Tift, Turner, Worth, Irwin. It's going to be a little later, sometime around the middle of November. Then when you get over to Colquitt, Thomas, Grady, Mitchell, Baker, Dougherty, Calhoun, Terrell, it's going to be somewhere around November 20th to 25th for a peak breeding window. And then when you get over into the southwestern corner, you see Early, Miller, parts of Decatur, parts of Grady that will rut that first week of December. And then you got that little bitty pocket down there in southwestern that's around Decatur County that can rut as late December to early January. So it really depends on where you're at in the south part of Georgia. But I hope I mentioned your county and you kind of got your answer that you were looking for there. John says big bucks are moving in Rochester, New York. Tracy says that they're seeing more dead deer on the highway, a sign that the deer activity is starting to pick up there for sure. Scott Scarborough says in Harris County, Georgia, a lot of scrapes. Bucks are finally starting to move a little more. Still rather warm though. Let's see here. See if we got any more questions or concerns. Jeffrey says a lot of acorns falling and hitting the ground in New Jersey and have until this point. Let's see if we got any more reports. Any more questions? Got a lot of them today. David says in North Carolina, starting to see some small bucks chase does. The big boys have not started doing the deed yet, though. That's to be expected. Tom Weiss says lots of sparring going on right now. Let's see here. Caleb has an interesting note here. Says still have some bucks hanging together in Indiana. That's what they're getting on their trail cameras anyway. I've seen a little bit of that here. There's a few bucks that's still hanging in a small remnant of a bachelor group, but for the most part, they've all broken up and busted up here in Kentucky. It's rare to see a bachelor group last much longer into the second half of October, especially for this part of the country. Let's see here. We're trying to dig through the bottom of the pile here, Josh, so we can get over to the Northeastern Report. Think. Cody says a lot of sparring in Ballard County, Kentucky. All right, man. Tell us what's happening up in the Northeast.
Well, we got a big storm system moving through for most of us, and it's probably going to go until I think Friday morning for much of the upper north New England area, up into Maine, New York, Connecticut, all that. We got some pretty heavy rain and some actual probably flooding for some people. Lots of wind, probably until Friday. So it's pretty nasty for a lot right now, but hopefully by the weekend that's moved out and we got looks like some cooler temperatures behind it. So should be a good weekend for at least a good portion of the Northeast.
Good deal. You know, at least for the Southeast and a lot of the Midwest, and of course Tyler will confirm for the Midwest. But you know that the front kind of pushed through middle of the week here. You know, it kind of hit today in Kentucky, so I imagine it's probably going to hit tomorrow in Virginia. In the eastern states now. Is the front going to be there in time, or is the front going to be beneficial to northeastern hunters this weekend, or is it going to go through a little bit too early for them to take advantage of it?
I think it's going to work out for a lot for the weekend. Like I said, here in Maryland, it was raining pretty much all day, and that's moving off. I think it's going to clear out for the rain tomorrow. Or tonight and tomorrow morning, and then like I said, it's going to be pretty windy. I think you're calling for gusts up in the 40, at least around my way tonight, and then tomorrow is going to be pretty windy, but the rain will be moved out, and that's just moving right up the coast there, all the way up, like I said, up into New York, New Jersey, up into Maine, the whole New England area. It's going to get pretty good amount of rain. I've seen some 2 to 3 inches of rain in the next 24 hours or so. And then, like I said, along the coast, I've seen gusts up to 50, 60 miles an hour. So it's a pretty good storm. So at least behind that, probably Pennsylvania, let's see, the western side of New York and Maryland, and then probably into New Jersey and Delaware and whatnot, probably be pretty good for the weekend at least. I'm not sure quite all the way up north. But for most, I feel like it'll be a good weekend.
Deal. You know, so I guess, you know, whereas the last two cold fronts, the first week of October and the second week of October, those hit just right for those that hunt in the Southeast, at least parts of the Southeast and the Midwest. Were those first two cold fronts that hit not quite as well timed for the Northeast as perhaps this one is going to be?
I feel like I definitely hunted the first one, which was right on the weekend, Friday and through the weekend. I feel like we've been getting pretty lucky for the most part with the weather and the weekends here, at least into October. So it ought to be pretty good. And like you said, we've just been lucking out.
How long will the cold weather, the cooler weather last from this front? Is it expected to last the whole weekend, or is it going to last into the beginning of next week? Reason I say that is here in Kentucky, that cold weather is going to push through, and it's going to be warm again for the weekend. So, you know, Kentucky, Tennessee hunters, Ohio hunters, you know, a lot of Midwestern hunters, at least the southern Midwestern hunters, you know, not really going to benefit from this cold front quite as much, because here in Kentucky, I think our highs are back up into the mid 70s, high 70s for the weekend. When will that cold weather kind of dissipate and kind of fade back to the warmer side of things up there in the Northeast?
Trying to jump in and check out New York right now.
Let's see if we've got some of our.
So they're going to have up towards New York, see Fridays in the 50s and 40s. I mean, it doesn't go back up much all the way up through next week. So I think it's pretty much the same for down
Good
here.
deal. Well, that's great news.
Maybe.
No, I was
Go
just saying
ahead.
that's great news for northeastern hunters. They'll be able to take advantage of this latest front.
Yeah, that's definitely one thing that I was going to mention is that the weather has been pretty good this year for October, especially compared to last year. I mean, we were just starting to cool off last year, and we've been, I mean, since we started October off, it's been great weather for the most part. We've had a couple of warm days here and there, but I mean, especially the lows. I mean, we've getting down in the 40s and 50s pretty consistent. So it's definitely increased the overall activity. So been seeing some good sign and good reports from people.
Awesome. What are your other sources telling you up there in the Northeast?
So let me jump in. So I spoke with Midwest Whitetail Pro staffer Corey Slater. He's over in Western Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. As the same as most in the Northeast, the acorns are hot right now. I feel like it was mostly reds as most people are reporting. He's still having luck with clover and alfalfa. It's still pulling deer in. Right around before and after the front, he's obviously had some of the better deer movement, but overall the deer movement's been pretty good for early October, like I was saying. He's noticing some rubs and scrapes starting to show up, and like I said, overall good buck movement for this early in October. He actually did a mentored hunt recently where his mentee was able to tag a 6+-year-old buck. So, and that buck was actually making a scrape. They watched him make a scrape, and he called him in. He grunted him in range. So it's pretty good stuff.
So the basically the rut tactics, the calling, the rattling is kind of starting to phase in just a little bit. It sounds like.
Definitely. And then I feel like when we have the colder days from talking to people, the colder days when you're getting down in the 40s, below 50s, obviously it's probably morning hunts, but it's definitely got the bucks feeling it and on their
Good
feet.
deal. And it's
So
actually kind of getting to that point here, probably within the next week or so, especially when we get into the last 6 to 7 days of October, where the decoy might just be efficient and effective.
definitely with the as long as the temperatures stay cooler like it looks like they're going to, I mean we should have good activity and should be good
Yeah.
hunting. We have our early muzzleloader season starting off tomorrow here in Maryland,
Hopefully.
so I'll be at work,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Hopefully we won't pay for it in November with all this good weather and it be beach weather in November.
yeah, hopefully it doesn't warm
But
up.
we'll take it while we can get it. That's for sure.
Absolutely. So, and then I spoke with Anthony Verga out in New Jersey. I believe he's in northern New Jersey in Sussex County, and he also hunts. I think it's right there close to New York, right in New York also. Um, Starting to see rubs and scrapes. Bucks are beginning to separate. He's still seen a few together, but for the most part, they're starting to separate. Um, he actually did mention that he's beginning to see some button bucks alone, which seemed to be a little early compared to last year. Um, Acorns are heavy in his area, particularly reds with next to no white acorns. Clover, vetch, and chicory are pretty popular also. And obviously with the abundance of acorns, it's been kind of keeping some of the older bucks tough to get a bead on them, as you were mentioning also. And then again, specifically on some of the colder days, he's had some good buck activity, and he actually was sending me a few trail cam pics of some nice bucks showing up well before dark on some food plots, and actually we're kind of checking they weren't just there to feed. They were checking the doe groups out and bumping some around, and you could see in a couple of the pictures where the buck was actually pushing the doe around the field. So that was
Starting to
pretty
feel it
cool.
just a little bit.
But again, when those temperatures drop, it seems to kick things up a notch.
Right.
So um, let's see. So that's pretty much. It was pretty much real similar for he actually just got to New York when I was talking to him, and it was real similar because I think he hunts pretty close to the with the New Jersey New York border there. Um, So let me jump over to this next one. Talked to a buddy up in New York who has a couple different reports from some of his friends. He's let's see, the first one in Lindley, New York, which I think is a little bit southern New York. Let's see. He actually seen a doe being pushed around by a spike buck at about 2 o'clock walking into his stand. But you know, you see that typically, I guess, when he's get here, the more we get into October, the younger bucks start to feel a little frisky first. Let's see.
As rubbing and scraping.
Definitely starting
Rubbing
to
and
see.
scraping start to pick up.
You see, yes, definitely starting to see. He said he's seeing tons of fresh scrapes and rubs in that area alone, and definitely seeing some various sized bucks while he was on his hunt, moving during daylight. He said I think they were still grouped up there, because we were kind of talking about bucks making scrapes and rubs while they're still in groups, which I guess they will be also. They'll begin to do that, but the more that kicks in, the more they'll begin to separate. Then he has another one. I'm a little all over the place. I didn't get this report put together quite yet. He was in Mexico, New York, which is in northern New York, and he seen one of his hit list bucks, and they were actually, this was around just a few days ago, around the 11th or 12th, I think, and seen 3 bucks altogether, one mature buck, and then so he's got a couple different reports in the area around Rochester and Buffalo, where they're still seeing some bucks still grouped up in that area. And he said if larger bucks are spotted, it's usually the last hour or so. That's when they're seeing the majority of the bigger buck activity.
Yeah. All things said, you know, with all your reports that have come in and the people that's, you know, you gathered some information from this week, what are your thoughts, anticipations, expectations for the coming weekend?
For those that can get out and the storm has moved out, it's probably going to be a pretty good weekend. As long as if you got some good deer in the area, it's probably a good weekend to get after them. As long as it stays cold like it looks like it's going to, or at least average or slightly below average temperatures, the deer activity should be good. And if you got a solid food source that you know the deer are going to, it's probably a good place to be. I've actually started seeing. This is my first year. I planted a bean plot, about 1.5 acres or so, and I went and checked some cameras on a small farm, and the deer are starting to hit the beans. And actually on the way home, I seen a bean field a few miles down the road from the small farm that I hunt that had about 10 or 15 deer out there, probably about an hour before dark in the beans. So still food sources right now, and if we have good temperatures, you never know when the big one might show up. Just kind of scoping the layout there and seeing what those are.
And those
around.
are actually dry beans, right? They're not green bean, you know.
Yes, these are dry beans. Yep.
You know, and that's something to talk about whenever we experience these good cold fronts that move through. In my experience, especially at least here in Kentucky, anyway, you know, when we have these periods of cooler weather that just, you know, that move through. Personally, I see more activity on grain food sources whenever those colder weathers hits. Of course, deer get a lot of energy from those. They get carbohydrates from grains such as soybeans and corn. So it's natural that they're going to gravitate to those high carb food sources because they need to generate the heat to sustain themselves through that period of colder weather. On the flip side, whenever we have warm-ups, such as we're going to have here in Kentucky and parts of the Southeast and Midwest moving into the weekend, I tend to see better activity on green food sources. Now, everybody has their own experiences. Some people say exactly the opposite. But personally, I feel like, at least here in the northern part of the Southeast and lower part of the Midwest, I see better activity on the grains, on the beans, the dry beans, not green soybeans, but dry beans, harvested, picked corn, even standing corn that's dried. I tend to see better activity on those during these colder spells. And then the green food sources like the food plots, brassicas, even green browse and native food sources and natural food sources that are still green that are leafy. Those I tend to see a little better activity on during those warmer spells. Is that the same up in the Northeast? What's your experience with that?
I definitely feel like it's similar, and with these colder temperatures, and like I said, I've been seeing them. It makes sense. I've been seeing them here recently with we had some rain come through. I guess it was
Mm-hmm.
Sunday, with a little bit it cooled down again just a little bit after that, and that's when I seen them out there in the beans. So I feel like it's pretty
Mm-hmm.
similar. So my buddy hunted his farm, and they were just cutting some beans, and the deer were pretty much piling out into the field. So it's I would feel as long as the weather's staying cooler here, that beans and corn and whatnot will probably stay pretty
Good
high.
deal. Is there any other tips or advice or anything that you can offer the northeastern deer hunter as they move into the weekend hunt here in a couple days?
I mean, I know you and Tyler kind of talked about it last weekend with the trail cameras and scrapes, and especially with the cooler temperatures, we're going to start seeing more rubs and particularly more scrapes showing up as the bucks really start to try to figure out where the does are, and when the first ones come in towards the end of October, November. So if you don't have trail cameras on scrapes, it's probably a good time to get them out there, definitely this week, and then that way you have a few weeks before November hits to see what bucks are in your area. Definitely good to take inventory there. So, and like I said, as long as the weather stays cooler and we get deeper into October, the scraping activity is definitely going to
Good
pick
deal.
up.
We're going to dive in here. I see Bart Goins is with us. We might be able to get him on here in just a second. We're going to dive into the comment section, see what is being dropped there. Obviously, we're going to follow our natural progression tonight, starting the southeast, then going to the northeast, midwest, northwest, southwest. We're going to be mixing in these 365 guests, so it's possible we could have Bart Goins on here in just a moment. And if not, we may have him on after the Midwest report. But let's dive into these comments here in just a second, or just for just a second. Jerry, his question is, what's your thoughts on the moon phase and how it affects deer? Josh, you want to answer that?
Um, I'm not a huge moon guy. I feel like I've had different experiences. A lot of people don't like a full moon. You don't get good activity. Uh, I've, I mean, I've always been the guy that's like, if I got time to go, I'm going to go, no matter what
Mm-hmm.
it is. And like I said, I've had different experiences. I've been out where there's times when I've had a full moon and I've had a horrible hunt, didn't see any deer, and then I've had other times where I've been out and I've had a great hunt. So I feel like I kind of focus on the weather more than the
As
moon.
do I.
That's just kind of
My,
my
my
way.
thoughts on the moon, I tend to focus more on moon position myself than moon phase. Um, uh, that's just a lot of the research and the studies out there that QDMA and others have reported on and produced. Penn State, there's different ones out there that studied this, but seems to be a little bit more, a little not quite as much stock in that full moon, affecting deer movement, or at least daylight deer movement. That's just what some studies have suggested. Now, I tend to put more stock in the moon position. I think I see more daylight activity on days where that moon is overhead underfoot, and it's directly overhead or directly underfoot around those peak movement times, 30 minutes after daylight or 30 minutes before dark. Do you see the same up in the Northeast?
For the most part, like I said, I kind of don't. I don't know. I don't focus too much on the moon myself.
Right, and it's mostly weather related too. I would have to agree with you, Dustin. We'll be talking about Illinois, and Mike will be talking about Ohio here momentarily in the Midwest report. Sean says seeing does during daylight hours, but bucks not quite making it to the food sources. It seems like in daylight. Um, let's see here. Sean says it's really windy there in PA. I'm gonna try and get in the stand Friday and
Definitely.
Saturday. Hopefully the deer start moving. Well, hopefully you'll have good luck this weekend. Let's see.
I'm thinking after tomorrow, if depending on how far he's up in PA, here in Maryland after tomorrow evening, tomorrow night, the wind's supposed to die down some. So like I said, hopefully for the weekend, for most that wind is kind of out of here for maybe Friday afternoon into Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. All right. Well, Josh, thanks for joining us. And here momentarily, I'm gonna try to get Bart Goins on, and if we can't get him, we'll jump to Tyler Ridenhour over in the Midwest. But thanks, Josh, for joining us tonight, and we look forward to hearing your report next Wednesday.
Definitely.
Thanks, man. You too.
Have a good one.
All right, there you have it. The Northeastern man himself. Here we go. Bart Goins coming at you. How you doing, big man?
Oh, what's up? How you doing, man?
I'm making it. So you're in a tree tonight, I hear.
Yeah, I just had a Spartan camera hit my phone there. Yeah, I hunted Alabama tonight. Of course, it's Alabama bow season just kicked off yesterday. So it's nothing too crazy going on here. Just typical early Alabama
And that's
season.
your soft grounds, right?
Yep. So we just purchased a farm. My brother and I, we closed on it end of August. It's 320 acres, a lot of pines, hardwoods. So our goal is we're going to take this whole property and basically give it a whole new look. We're going to cut some trees. We're going to put some big food plots in on it. And hopefully it's probably going to be a 3 to 5 year process, but we've been running cameras and I've got probably 6, 7 mature deer on it. But the problem is they all 6 and 7 points. So we got to get to work on the genetics a little bit.
Good deal. Well, I'll tell you what, most of the viewers probably are aware of who you are, but tell us a little bit about yourself and, maybe introduce your inclusion on Realtree 365.
Yeah. Okay. So Blair and I, my brother, we started filming 10, 12 years ago, and we worked for Drury Outdoors Dream Season. We did that for 7, 8 years. We were on the Working Man show, and then we did The Journey with Jeff and David Lindsay and Joe Schultz and a couple of those. And then, let's see, 2 years ago, we did our own show called The Rival, in which The Rival is still going. We just got some other guys filming for it now. And now we've accepted a deal with Realtree for Whitetail TV, which is on the Realtree 365 app. So it's cool, man. It's everything's run up to speed. A lot of you are familiar how the 365 is going. You can watch week to week what we're doing. And like I said, the hunt I had tonight will probably be on next week's episode. It was uneventful, so to say. We just saw some does, but hey, that's the way the season goes, man. You know, every evening ain't what you want it to be. So yeah, check it out, Realtree 365. For the ones that's been following it, you know that there's a really big deer that I've got on my Illinois farm this year. Really big, the biggest deer I've ever had to chase. We're thinking 220 range, and it's developing story on the Whitetail TV show. And we nicknamed the deer Boo. And so, if nothing else, that'll be a good following point because I'm getting pictures of him every 4 or 5 nights. Like I said, it's mainly nighttime movement right now. I still think it's a little early, just as the guy before me was talking about. I think it's a little early. I think another 6, 7 days. I'm going to go to Illinois, and I'll probably stay up there for a hot minute trying to kill that deer. So I'm kind of just laying low right now and trying not to pressure him too hard, but I feel like he's close.
Sounds like that's the takeaway for a lot of Midwestern hunters right now. You know, ease in maybe a little bit if you get a good cold front that hits, but for the most part, kind of lay off those good spots until the last week or so of October. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, and I will say, so I've got probably 10 satellite cameras out up there right now, and 6 of them are over scrapes. And I will say, within the last 2 nights, they've really ramped up the movement. Every scrape tree I had last night got hit by at least 3 different bucks. Of course, middle of the night stuff, a lot of younger buck stuff too. So I would say, as bad as you want to get out there and get after it, I wouldn't burn it up just yet. Just I've been hunting that particular farm for 9 years now, and Usually right around the 22nd, 23rd October. That's when I like to get pretty busy with it. So, and then I'll still hunt mainly evenings, but I'll start easing into the mornings. Right around 27, 28.
This deer that you're hunting up there, Boo, is this a deer that you followed for multiple years, or did he just show up this season?
No, I had him last year. You're gonna think I'm crazy when I tell you this, but I had him last year. I think I'm 95% confident the deer's only 4 years old this year. Last year he was a 140-inch deer. Had some characteristics on the right side. Had an extra main beam. Nothing huge. Nothing special. And all of a sudden this summer I was checking trail cameras, and I had a picture of him coming to a bean field, and he blew out just all kind of trash. He's got 3 beams on one side, drop tines, just got everything. And so I noticed how small his body was, and I was like, I got to figure out who this deer is. So of course I started studying pictures, and I figured out exactly who it is. And studying pictures from last year, that's how I run so many cameras up there. I feel like we're successful, and we kill the deer we want to kill by previous years, knowing where they're going to be at what time of the year. So of course I went back to studying last year's pictures, and I got a good I feel like I got a good plan on him the next 2 to 3 weeks. I just hope that he don't break up. He's the kind of deer he's got just a bunch of points on his left side, the front. He's got some extra beams growing out. He's the kind of deer, if something hit him the wrong way, he'd break 50 inches off real quick. So, that's another thing. But I don't know, man. If it's in the good Lord's will for us to kill him, we'll kill him.
Sounds like he's got some solid genetics to be something like that, especially at 4.5. So we hope you get that deer. Now, as far as your hunting goes down in Alabama, Tell us a little bit about what the deer are doing down there. Obviously, Alabama is later in the year as far as the rut goes, but what's just the current deer activity for that part of the country?
Well, I will say this. There's a lot of acorns falling right now, and I feel like in my neck of woods, they just started in the last week, 10 days. And that's got you deer transitioning in the hardwoods more than coming to your green fields. A lot of people in North Alabama, they plant green fields, half acre green fields. And we went so long without rain that we're just now starting to get rain. People starting to get their food plots up. But I think the deer are really hitting acorns right now. If you've got some white oaks, red oaks, I would probably be down in there. Then, of course, Alabama, they just passed the baiting law this year. So you can take 40 pounds of corn, or you can take 4,000 pounds of corn, hunt over, whatever you want to do. I feel like I've been running feed stations down on our farm down there, and they were really hitting them really good 2 to 3 weeks ago. And then all of a sudden, in the last week, it's been kind of hit and miss. And I feel like that's – yeah. Hey, bigger the pile, the better. Right. The way I see it. You want to feed them all. You don't want them to pile.
So tall that you can't see the deer on the other side of it.
That's right. Yeah. So I feel like they're probably a lot of you deer probably in the hardwoods if you've got trees that are dropping. So my advice to any Alabama hunters would be, get in the hardwoods, man. Go find a tree that's dropping. And a lot of times I remember growing up hunting with my dad and my brother, you could walk hardwoods, and a lot of times you'd find several trees dropping, but every now and then there wouldn't be as many. You'd find that 1 or 2 dropping, and you'd see all kind of deer mess under it, and you could tell that the deer were really pounding it. That's kind of an early season plan. I mean, you can still bait in Alabama. So by all means, I would still run cameras, bait, and try to figure out, what your deer are doing. But I really think
mentioned the oaks. You may have already said it, but what species, whites, reds, which ones do you think are dropping the most or seem to be dropping the most this season?
I feel like the mountain oaks are dropping pretty good, and if the white oaks have really started too. And I think they prefer the white oaks myself, but you just never know, man. You walk those hardwood ridges, and it's so weird to me because up at my farm in Illinois, uh, my worst nightmare is to go walking my ridges. You know what I'm saying right now? But in Alabama, you got to get out and try to figure out where they're at, what they're doing. And I don't know if it's a specific species of oak, but you may find that one tree that's right there close to a bedding or something that they're just hammering. And that's what I would look for.
Good deal. Is there any other tips or advice that you can give either a southern deer hunter in Alabama or somebody up in the Midwest as we, anything advice you can give them as we move into the weekend?
Well, down here, I'm going to probably go to Jackson, Tennessee, and hunt with my buddy Mike Barker this weekend. And the weather's not looking too hot down here. I think it's going to be 68 to 70 for the highs, and you got east southeast wind. So I don't really expect a whole lot of movement where I'm going to be. We're mainly just, we're going hunting. I'm going to go hunting. So right now, I mean, in the Midwest, everybody's chomping at the bit to start diving in and going deep.
Right.
But I think it's still just about 2 weeks early, week and a half early. And, it's a long season. You ain't got to get it done in 1 week, just take your time, be patient, try to make your moves when you feel like you can make them without being too risky. Last weekend I wanted to go to Illinois so bad and hunt that cold front and hunt the big deer boo. But they were calling, which was so weird too, they were calling for a north wind or a west wind for one day, then going straight back to southwest. And typically up there, when you get a big front, you get a couple of days of north winds. Well, that's the main spot that I'm hunting the deer has got to be a north wind. So I just didn't, I skipped the weekend going up there. I was just going to be patient. I didn't want to roll the dice with the wind being marginal, especially this early. So it sucks missing a cold front like that because I felt like all my deer hunting buddies was up north hunting last weekend, but I didn't have a good gut feeling. So just be patient, man. It's only mid-October. We got a long season ahead of us, and just try to make your right moves when it's the right time.
Where can everybody follow you this season? Obviously Realtree 365, but social, where can they follow your story at?
Yep. Okay. So my Instagram is BartGoins14. I try to do a daily feed on my news stories and stuff of what we're doing because, we're doing something in the woods nearly every day right now, whether it's working on our Alabama stuff or traveling up north. And I went to Oklahoma 2 weeks ago. I'll probably go back to Oklahoma. Yeah, BartGoins14 Instagram is probably the best thing. I've got a Twitter. I don't use it too much. It's BartGoins1, and then of course I had a Facebook, BartGoins. But the Realtree stuff, like I said, they're dropping episodes every week, so that's a good spot to follow it too. I've tried to get better with my social media, so probably Instagram and then the Realtree 365 stuff. You can follow it, and if I do look up and kill that big deer, you're gonna know about it because I'm gonna let everybody know.
Hey, we don't blame you a bit.
All right. The good thing is, whether I kill him or not, we're telling the whole story of it. So, I might have a neighbor that kills him, or you just don't ever know with a deer like that. But it's going to be a fun story to watch play out.
Absolutely. And like I said, guys, you can go check out and download that app on iTunes, Google Play. Download it to your phone. It's free to watch. All you got to do is sign up. And then you've got a ton of shows on there to watch, such as Whitetail TV. There's a bunch of other stuff on there as well. We'll talk about that a little bit more here momentarily. But, Bart, thanks, man, for joining us tonight. And we'll definitely have to get you back on here sometime later this season, hopefully after you kill that big deer boo.
Yeah, I hope you're right. But, hey, I'll come back either way, whether I kill him or not. Good luck to y'all this weekend.
Thank you. Well, there you have it, an awesome report and update from the Goins, Mr. Goins, Bart himself. He told us a lot about what's going on in the South there in Alabama, also what's happening in the Midwest. His word is wait just a little bit. Give it a little time before you dive in, especially those best spots that you got on the farms that you hunt. Hunt those fringes a little bit longer is pretty much the message. We're going to be going to Tyler Ridenauer in the Midwest region to get his report. But here, just before we do, I'm going to dive in and see if there's any quick questions. Greg, he's asking, when do you think the chasing phase is for South Central Kentucky? Greg, that's where I'm at. And generally, we see a peak breeding date somewhere around November 14th, 15th. Sometimes it can be as early as November 10th. Kind of fluctuates plus or minus 2 or 3 days each year. But generally, I see the best chasing activity between November 4th and 5th all the way up to around November 9th, 10th. That seems to be the peak period, peak 5 days for chasing activity. Sometimes you can get really good chasing activity those first 5 days in November, but then it can also be really slow some years. So the safest bet for good quality chasing activity here in South Central Kentucky is going to be November 5th to November 10th, somewhere around in there. See if we got any other questions or reports. Let's see here. I think that's it. We're going to jump over to Tyler and get his Midwest report. How you doing, Tyler?
Hey Josh, how we doing?
Good, good. A little bit later tonight than we typically are. We had a little bit later start time. We had some guys in a tree taking advantage of this midweek cold front. Tell us what's happening up there in the Midwest right now.
Hey, you guys touched on a little bit. You know, we got this colder weather coming through right now. In certain parts of the Midwest, it's kind of stayed cold, so this isn't real. You know, at least cooler. This definitely isn't as significant a front as either of the first two that we've had. You know, the first two cold fronts in October. And deer movement's still been pretty good. Like I said, it's been cool, but it's supposed to warm up for most of the Midwest over the weekend. Unfortunately, for the guys that are just your weekend warriors trying to get out there, this is not going to be the best weekend. But we've been pretty lucky. We've had 2 weekends in a row with really good conditions for the first half of October. So got to count your blessings. And as you and Bart were just talking about, if there's a weekend to sit on your hands, take it easy, kind of pull back on the reins. This is it. You need to split firewood before winter. You need to spend some time with the wife and kids, whatever it is. This is probably the weekend to do it. There's still opportunities to be had out there, but it's definitely not going to be anything like the past couple of weekends. And looking ahead to the next couple of weeks, it doesn't matter what the weather is. We start getting into late October and getting into November, you're going to want to be in the woods. So this is your time to cross those last couple of things on the honey-do list off and make some adjustments. If you're able to get out, move cameras. If you haven't moved them yet, get them onto scrapes, sit observation stands. We're seeing some transitioning in food sources. As you guys were talking about earlier, you and Josh, I've seen deer, especially here in southern Michigan where I'm at, starting to make a big switch just because we've had this cool weather stick around. It hasn't just been a 2 or 3 day blast. It's actually hung around where it's been cooler, and they're starting to switch back to grains. We've got a lot of standing corn, as does most of the Midwest, and most of our beans are out or coming out right now. So it's tough, with that much standing corn. It can be hard. If you've got, good standing dry beans, the deer are still visible, so you're able to learn a little bit there from an observation stand. But with those beans coming out and as much corn as we've got standing still across the region, it's tough to get an idea of what's moving where, and it could feel like the deer just up and vanished, but a lot of times they're going to be in that corn.
Absolutely, and that's kind of been the theme here. A lot of the corn has come out here in Kentucky, but the beans are coming out now. Actually, the farms that I hunt, the last of the beans just ran. They actually ran corn before they ran beans this year everywhere that I hunt, but there's still a little bit of corn still standing in places that I've seen. And like you said, in those areas, it seems like the camera activity just isn't quite as good as the places where the corn is all out. And obviously, as you mentioned, there's an obvious reason for that. So what's your tips or advice for those out there who might be dealing with a little bit of standing crop still?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, most of the Midwest is probably dealing with that more than you typically would. We had a lot of late planting because of the, that wet spring we had. It's still haunting us right now. There's a lot of standing crops out there. So if you're dealing with standing corn right now, scrapes are really getting a lot of action the last week. They continue to pick up as we go through October. They're just going to keep getting more and more attention. But there's been, as Bart was talking about, just the last few days, huge uptick in scraping activity. Everybody I talked to, Steve Gillickson in Wisconsin especially, they're getting a ton of scraping activity up there. So if you can find scrapes, primary scrapes that are getting hit regularly, especially with some of this rain coming through with this system, they're going to hit scrapes in the mornings coming back to bed. Typically always going to freshen them up. That's one, if you can bet on one thing, that's probably it. And if you can find something on the edge of a standing cornfield, where they feel safe, they've got that cover maybe between a tree row, hedgerow in that cornfield, and you've got a good primary scrape there, might be worth, sitting that. But as you and Bart were talking about, you got to play it safe. So if you're hunting a big deer, if you really want to kill a mature deer, I wouldn't push the envelope this weekend.
Hold your cards.
Hunt an observation stand.
Yeah, hold your cards and wait for that
Yeah.
ace to show up in the river.
Yep. Yeah. And we got a week and a half, 2 weeks. It's go time. So sit back, sit in an observation stand, I think is one of the best things you can do right now. Try to learn all you can. Make sure your cameras are in the right spot. If you want to get in the woods, do that, or hunt a secondary location where you got an easy in and out. You're not going to, bump any deer. You're not going to educate any deer, especially somewhere close to, a big deer you're trying to kill. Keep your distance and do all you can not to disturb anything
Very,
there.
very stark differences and whereas most of the time our reports are the same for the weekend, just about regardless of what region you're in, unless you go out where in Métis country in the Northwest and Southwest. Generally, our Northwest, our Northeast, Midwest, and Southeast reports, at least the northern half of the Southeast, are very similar. Usually a common theme. This week's very different. In the Northeast, Josh was talking about how that front is going to be hitting the Northeast just perfect. But that's not the case in the Midwest, and it's not the case in the northern part of the Southeast either. Definitely time to hold your horses in the Midwest and the Southeast. What is your advice? I know you've already given a ton of it, but for those who still want to get out there or just want to get in a tree, would you just advise them to hunt observation stands, hunt fringes? What would you tell the deer hunter who wants to get out there, but obviously they don't need to get out there and mess up their best spots just yet?
Yeah, I mean, that would be it. Hunt an observation stand, if you're really serious, trying to kill a big deer, trying to kill a mature deer. Just want to get in the woods and try to kill a deer, and you've got some good spots. Still hold off on those, hunt a secondary location, hunt a spot where you can slip in and out really easy. Something where you can slip out, just 50, 100 yards off the edge of a road or, of a two-track, something like that, where you can get in super easy and clean. That's what I would hunt this weekend. And there is some exception, even within the Midwest, as we look up into, the northern half of Wisconsin, into Minnesota and up into the Dakotas. It's going to stay pretty cold up there. I mean, fall has settled in there, and it looks like it's going to stick around. They may get a day where it warms up a little bit, but it's not going to get warm by any means, compared to certain parts of the, central Midwest and southern Midwest, where it's going to get up into the 70s in a lot of areas. So if you're up in that northern third, northern quarter of the Midwest, you could still have a good weekend, but play it safe. We're so close to things getting really good, even if you're up that way, you've got a deer moving in daylight regularly on camera, get in there and try to kill him, absolutely. But if he's still moving an hour after dark or an hour before it gets light, just be patient. It's the week to be patient, that is for sure.
Is there anything else you can share with us from your contacts and resources up there?
Yeah, I can run through some of these, hot food sources and stuff like that and what we're seeing as far as rut sign. So here in Michigan, like I said, big transition from greens to grain in the last week. But with this warmer weather, I don't know that I would expect that to hold true. And it's kind of a mixed bag right now. We're still seeing some deer in alfalfa and clover plots, quite a few deer in standing beans where they're available. And there's a few remnant oak trees in my area here. We didn't have a real good oak crop, and that's one thing if you can find, those remaining oaks that are dropping, definitely target in on those because they're not going to stick around long. So yeah, I talked to Steve Gullickson, like I said, in Wisconsin, good buddy of mine up there, and they are seeing some mature bucks on their feet up there, and starting to see a lot of scraping activity this week. It really, really bumped up, and starting to see they're having probably the most rut activity, and it's just younger bucks, but they're seeing a lot of younger bucks starting to actually cruise and bump some does around and whatnot up there. So they're starting to really feel their oats up in that North Country. Talked to my buddy Hayden Henderson down with Tamarack Outfitters. He's in southwestern Kansas. And same deal there, big uptick in scraping and rubbing. Still on a bed to feed, pretty solid there and consistent with, young wheat that's just popping good tender wheat, alfalfa, and they've got a little bit of milo hanging around. They've been hitting that with this colder weather, but again, that warm up, I wouldn't expect that trend to continue for them. So yeah, that's it as far as kind of hot food sources. If you're in the core of the Midwest, Iowa, northern Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, it's going to kind of reflect the same. Some of those areas have got really good acorn crops, and it can be tough. There's a lot of acorns on the ground still in some of those places, but if you're in a place where there's a few remnants still dropping, focus on those. And with this warmer weather, even though we've seen that slight transition to grain, I would focus on the grain food plots this weekend if you are going to get out.
Good deal. Well, we're going to be transitioning momentarily over to Josh Sparks, who is a Realtree 365 guest, a member of the Midwest Whitetail crew. We're going to jump into the comments real quick, see if there's any questions or reports. Jerry, he says, good luck to everybody out there. He said, I think it's early youth season coming up for Jerry. I'm not sure what state you're in, but good luck to you and all the youth hunters where you're at. I think that's it. Devin says lots of acorns falling. I think he's in eastern Kentucky. And that's pretty much it. Is there anything else that you can share with us tonight?
No, man, I think that's it. Just be patient. Don't get too eager and play it safe this weekend for most of the Midwest, unless you've got a pretty much a sure thing on your hands. And if you do get out, be safe and good luck to everybody.
Thanks for the report. Solid, great advice, and we thank you for that. And we will check back in with you next Wednesday night.
Sounds good. Have
Thank
a good
you,
one.
All right, you heard it from Tyler. He is our resident Midwest reporter, hailing from Michigan, but covering all things Midwestern deer hunting. Our next guest that's going to be coming on is our good buddy Josh Sparks with Midwest Whitetail. I'm going to see if I can send him an invite momentarily. I don't see him right now as we speak, but I have seen him on here, so we will get him here in just a moment, and we will jump back into the comments here. Until then, 1 second here. Drew, we got some comments here. Slade says he'll be back after it soon. See if we've got here Slade. Steve, I don't see Josh, but I know he was on here a minute ago. We may have to transition over to our next region. I'm not sure. Hold on 1 second. We'll give him just a minute. We still have our northwest and southwest reports to come tonight. Patrick Mayteen, he'll be coming on here momentarily, I do believe. We're going to send him a quick notification just to be sure he's ready. See if we got who we got here. Still nothing on Josh. I know he is he's in here. Josh, I know you're watching. Just got your notification, but I can't add you right now. You may have to pull up the video full screen or something like that. I'm not sure, but I'm not able to add you right now. I'm not able to send you an invite. I can see that you're watching, but I can't add you at the moment. not able to send you a request to join. While we're looking at that, and while we're waiting to see if we get that worked out, we'll obviously be going over to our Northwest and Southwest reports here momentarily as well. We'll check in with Patrick Mayteen. But until then, I'm going to reflect just a little bit on what we've seen from the Southwest, Northwest, or excuse me, the Southeast, Northeast, and Midwest. Basically in the Southeast, we don't really have much of a front that's going to help us this week. The same story goes for the Midwest. The front's kind of passing through midweek, and it's really not going to help the weekend warriors out at all. That said, when we checked in with Josh Montgomery, he said the Northeast is definitely seeing a great weekend lined up ahead. And that's the good news. That's the silver lining in this week's report. Josh, I know you're on here, but I still can't send you an invite. You might have to make sure your phone's turned sideways, screen lock's turned off, and all the other stuff, and the permissions as well. I can't add you though. I'm not able to send you an invite. Let's see here. We'll see if we can get that going here in just a moment. Give him a little more time. Let's see here. Yeah, don't think we've got him just yet. Sorry guys, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Let's dive back into the comments while we're waiting to see. Slade Priest checking in with us. We had Slade Priest on last week. He told us what's happening in the South there in Mississippi. Obviously, you can follow his story on the Realtree 365 as well. He is with the Realtree United Country by trade, but you can follow his season on Realtree's Hunt United as well as Pay Dirt. You can follow him and his story throughout the season on those two weekly episode series on Realtree 365 app. There are a number of other guests that we'll be having on later in the season. A lot of them are Realtree 365 guests. Tonight we had on Bart Goins. We may be able to bring on Josh Sparks here momentarily, but he's got some technical issues that he's working through. But there's a lot of really cool guests we're going to have on. So we will have our weekly reporters on every week for the Southeast. That's me, Northwest, and Southwest, Patrick Mayteen, as well as the Northeast and the Midwest, which is Josh Montgomery and Tyler Ridenauer. We'll have those guys on every week, but we're going to have some rotating guests on, usually 1 to 2 a week from Realtree 365. They're basically going to tell us their story. They're going to introduce themselves, tell us who they are. They're going to give us their own Rut reports, and it's going to be a fun season. We're just now getting started. This is week 3 of somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 or 19. So long road ahead still for the Rut Report. But we're just getting started, and we're going to have some fun with it this fall. Obviously, you definitely need to follow the Goins brothers. They're going to be hunting that big deer called Boo that he introduced to us earlier. Go check out that story on Realtree 365 as well, and that's going to be some fun stuff. Now, I just caught wind that it looks like we're not going to have Mr. Mayteen on tonight. I don't see him. I'm not going to be able to add him onto the live feed. I do have his reports though. If he is not able to join us, I will definitely still be able to give you his reports for the Northwest and the Southwest because he has sent his notes to me. So if we aren't able to get Mr. Mayteen on here momentarily, we will definitely read his reports anyway. And that's probably what I'm going to do as we give Josh Sparks some more time to see if he can join us, see if he can get those technical difficulties worked out. I think he might have some service issues or something, I'm not sure. But while we're waiting on him, I am going to jump in and read the reports from Mr. Mayteen. Oh, nope, Mr. Mayteen just come back to us. We're going to go to you, man. We're sending an invite to Mr. Mayteen right now. And while we're going to Mr. Mayteen for the Northwest and Southwest regions, Josh, we're going to see if we can give you some more time to work through that, some of those technical issues that you got. Hey, Patrick, how are you?
Good.
How's things going up in the north?
Just the camera. I was just rebooting things because you said I wasn't on, so I just rebooted the whole camera. That's why I had it in my hand.
No worries at all. Sometimes we have to shake these things up with the Rut Report because, you know, we got a lot of flying pieces going around and it's all live. So we have all kinds of madness that happens on here, but it's fun kinds of madness. So, yeah, we were going to go to Josh Sparks, and I think he is back with us actually now. I think he had to work through.
I can do the Northwest and then cut in between Northwest and Southwest if you want.
Sounds good. That's what we'll do. We'll get the Northwest report from you. Josh, I think we have you back. And then we will come back to Mr. Mayteen for the Southwest region here in a few minutes. But, yeah, tell us what's happening up there in the Northwest, Patrick.
So Northwest, I mean, nothing really out of the ordinary for this time of year. We're we're 2 or 3 weeks out from any kind of rut activity. Though I have 3 buddies that live up in the Spokane area, and they're pretty serious whitetail hunters, weekend warrior type guys that take a week off when the rut really gets going, archery guys. And they're definitely saying that there's a very slow upswing in buck movement this week. Things have cooled off a little bit, so that's not really surprising. Though they're saying that the biggest bucks are still pretty nocturnal, which is pretty parallel to what I'm seeing here. I just spent the entire day coyote hunting and checking cameras and just covered a lot of ground in a couple of my hunting areas here. And, looking back at notes from last year, we actually seem to be a little behind, which is odd because it is cooler than it was last year this time of year. And didn't find any scrapes, no major rubs. I mean, it just doesn't really look like it's even ramping up at all. Good news is, I mean, my big buck that kind of disappeared early has shown back up. The bad news is that my camera died on about the 4th of October. So, but he's still around, and so look forward to that. But what we've got going on here in Idaho, Washington, I assume is going to be the same. We have, it's really dried out this week, which has really helped things out. We were having pretty much nonstop rain. It's dried out, it's cooled off, but we've got some weather coming in straight out of the south, which is going to warm things up a tad and also bring a lot of rain. Saturday, I believe, is a 90% chance of rain. Sunday is about 50% chance of rain. So the way weather works here in the Northwest is when you desperately want rain, 50% means it's not going to rain. When you're sick of rain and don't want it to rain, 50% means for sure. So, you're going to be hunting here in Idaho this weekend. Just, take your rain gear and place your shots carefully. It's going to be raining. Other than that, I've seen a lot of does moving all day long. A few small bucks I've seen, mostly on private land, and I'll get to that in a minute because I did get some kind of late input today from a buddy of mine who owns a piece of private property. But I'm hunting mostly public lands or private that might as well be public because he lets anyone hunt there that wants. And all the big bucks on my cameras are the ones that didn't die because I haven't been over there in a month. They're still pretty nocturnal. And but I am seeing a couple of bucks that I have not seen before or have shown up. That's always a good sign. That starts happening about now in this part of the world. And I'm also seeing a couple of pretty decent bucks who are edging towards legal shooting hours. I mean, it's morning, it might be legal shooting hours, but whether you could actually see or not with the overcast would be another story. But, they are edging towards that. This is that time of year when you go ahead and sit because you never know what's going to happen. It's, looking at cameras today, had mature bucks showing up on camera during legal shooting hours, but we're looking at 2 weeks of images, and he showed up once, you know. So this is a time of year, if you feel lucky and you just need to be in a tree and you do it carefully without bumping deer, you know, it's worth sitting. Now, my buddy Dustin Bromley, he has a really nice piece of private property fairly close to where I live here. And, you know, it's exclusive. It doesn't get hunted. And he's just telling me a totally different story. He was seeing his son shot a mature buck during the opening weekend of rifle season. They're seeing deer moving during the day. He's saying they're still in their bachelor groups mostly. And, you know, he saw some younger bucks sparring and that sort of thing. So seems like where they've been left alone, things are pretty much on schedule with the last year. Idaho did sell every single tag, resident and non-resident, this year. So maybe there's just more guys in the woods on the public land this year than there was last year. Because it just, I went to at least a dozen spots that almost guaranteed there will be scrapes there when they get going, and then they hadn't potted at all. It hadn't started. So, but I'm seeing that the biggest bucks have definitely split off the bachelor groups. Some of the 3.5-year-olds are still together. The young bucks are definitely still together. And so, yeah, we've got 2 or 3 weeks to go here before we're really going to get any of that real rut action. Now, Montana, talking to my buddies over there, and they were really hard to get a hold of this week. They're all in the field. They're all hunting. And I'm just getting very short little text messages. But saying the bachelor groups have definitely broke up in Montana. They're starting to see a lot of scrapes and rubs are starting to pick up over there. And definitely things are picking up over there. They usually, the consensus with the guys I'm talking to seems to be about November 1 is really when things are going to get going, and that would be about right on schedule. They're ramping up in a big way over there. Lots of scrapes, lots of rubs, pretty decent movement. Some of the biggest bucks, the 5.5, the plus year-old bucks are still fairly nocturnal, but they're seeing really good movement. Wyoming, Dustin DeCrew from Bighorn Outfitters, you know, he's telling me they're still seeing really good daytime movement. I would say the big difference with Wyoming is it's that plains country, that prairie country. So it's kind of hard. It's a lot harder for the deer to hide than it is, especially in Idaho and Washington. So I'm sure our deer are probably moving in the middle of the day, but we just have so much trees and brush that they're harder to see. But they're getting a lot of daytime movement. They're getting a lot of movement in the evenings into the agricultural fields. And they're also killing some really nice bucks this year, 5.5, 6.5-year-old bucks. And so he's obviously managing his properties very well because they're keeping that age class way up there.
Good.
But I guess the big news in the whole Northwest this weekend is that it is going to rain. I mean, almost assuredly. Now at the higher elevations, that might cool things off and spark some movement, maybe get snow instead of rain. But here in the Idaho Panhandle and Washington in particular, it's going to rain, and it's going to be probably pretty miserable. If I were saving vacation or I needed to get some stuff done around the house, I would probably skip this weekend here in Washington, Idaho. Montana, Wyoming, now it could snow over there. That's not quite as miserable. It's actually pretty pleasant, quiets things down. You can do some tracking. But that's pretty much the word for this coming weekend.
Good deal. Thank you. That's the common theme across most of the country so far, with the exception of the Northeast. The Northeast, be in a tree if you can, because that front's going to hit just right up there in the Northeast region for most of the states. But definitely in the Northwest, it sounds like, for the Midwest and the majority of the Southeast, this weekend is kind of pull the reins back a little bit. Hold your horses just a tad. The conditions aren't going to be all that great. But we will check back in with you momentarily. I'm going to think we're going to try to go over and add Mr. Josh Sparks. I've seen that I've been able to send him an invite several times. I can't send him one right now. but we should be good to go here in a minute. I think he's got that worked out. So we'll jump back and talk to you here in a minute, Patrick.
Okay. A lot to cover in Texas, so
Good deal.
that'll be perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, we'll come back to Patrick Mayteen here momentarily. Josh, I see you're watching, but I can't send you the invite. You should be good to go once you get the screen pulled up full screen and turn the phone sideways. You should be good to go. While we give him just a minute, I'm going to jump back into the comments, see if we have anything here. Let's see. We have got AJ says heading to Kansas end of October to beginning of November. Is that the good time for the rut seeing activity? AJ, I mean, yeah, the last few days of October, first few days of November can be great. Especially this, the fact that it's the tail end of the pre-rut there. You see a lot of really good daylight action on scrapes, on rubs. Rub lines and scrape lines, you see some good activity. You start to see bucks start to push does. Now, for the most part, and again, Tyler is the Midwestern reporter, but, I think the peak of the rut, the peak breeding out there is going to be somewhere around November 10th to 15th as well. So that peak chasing period is going to be somewhere around November 2nd, 3rd to 9th to the 10th. But definitely can still see some really good activity there the last few days of October and first few days of November. Sometimes they seem to light up and things turn on a little bit sooner. Yeah, that's definitely still a good time to be in a Kansas tree. See if we've got any more questions. Let's see here. Gail says Texas movement really picking up. September was really hot, but the recent cool weather has helped buck activity. Let's see here. I'm still not able to send you an invite for some reason, Josh. And sometimes these are Facebook Live issues, and nothing that we can really control. I've been able to add you earlier. I was able to send you an invite earlier while we were talking to Mr. Mayteen, but I'm not able to send you one right now for some reason. It's not giving me that option. I am going to turn on here something that sometimes works. I'm going to make it to where you guys can request to join. All you followers out there, please hold that, and let's let Mr. Sparks request to join if that works for him. We'll try that instead. We'll give it just a minute here and see if that works. I just basically set the settings to where you could request to join. There we go. We're coming at you. I briefly had you there. I think we might be able to come through and get you. I saw you popped up briefly. Briefly. Hey, Facebook Live, brother.
Now let's see if I can get enough service.
Can you hear me and see?
Can you hear me and see? Hello? Can you see me? I can see you.
All right, there's a little bit of feedback.
All right, there's a little bit of feedback.
I'm going to all the talking.
I'm going to let you do all the talking.
Tell me a little bit.
Tell me who you are. Tell me a little bit.
And then explain the way you're seeing it so far.
Explain the way you're seeing it so far. Okay. Well, my name is Josh Sparks. I'm with Midwest Whitetail. And actually just got done hunting. I've been after the same buck on a piece of public land down here. And this has been the sixth time that I've sat in the same field for him, and we saw him again tonight, I believe. The guy that was filming with me, he's actually got to go back to the computer. It was all on infrared when he stepped out, but it's the exact opposite of what everybody else is talking about being safe. I have been as aggressive as I've ever been for the first 2 weeks of October, but the main reason being is the access to this particular spot is just bulletproof. I mean, like today, we didn't get set up in the tree. We did a hang hunt. I think we were set up at 5:30. We hunted for an hour. We're able to just sneak in and sneak right out, even with the deer in the field, less than 100 yards away. So I'm going to continue to do that as long as the weather is cooperating, which if anybody is in Iowa watching this, I'm sure they're aware. This next week's going to be pretty rough compared to what we've been really lucky. Pretty cool temperatures and just high pressure systems. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a heck of a season so far, for sure.
Everybody's situation is different. But you know, you're pushing the envelope for good reason. But you know, tell us a little bit more about
Sorry, can you repeat that one? Okay. Yeah, so Midwest Whitetail, I guess what my role is, I produce the show. So with Realtree 365 every Monday, a viewer can tune in to what happened with all of us. You're on the show. I'm not sure if anybody's aware of that, but Josh is new to the team this year, and he's been providing us some really cool hunts from Kentucky, along with his partner John Kirby. But it's just a really slick app. I mean, that's kind of what I've been using to catch up with everybody. The other thing is Midwest Whitetail Daily is a channel. So if anybody's never heard about that, you can follow the hunts as they're happening. So for example, tonight, the hunt that I went on, it'll be up in the next 12 hours, hopefully. But yeah, I know all the other guys are hunting bigger deer than me, that's for sure. But I know Jared had a really good hunt tonight. I can't go into that too much, but he had it's all really good bucks. So.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. I know you're going to be getting after that night deer. Good luck.
All right, man. Sorry about all the technical
No worries at all. This happens. No worries at all. We have lots of real time.
All right, brother. Appreciate it. Good luck this coming week in Ohio.
Thank you.
See you, man.
Well, there we got the report from Mr. Sparks there. I'll tell you, he is a super talented guy. He is one of the most talented videographers and producers in the industry. And, when you see that magic come through each week on the Midwest Whitetail Weekly Show and Chasing November each summer, he's a big part of that, probably the biggest part. So as far as pulling that all together and making the magic happen, Mr. Josh Sparks does that for Midwest Whitetail and Chasing November. And we've had a little bit of technical issues there, but that's all right. That's sometimes, that happens because this is Facebook Live. This is unscripted. This is as real as it gets. So sometimes we have to work through these technical difficulties, and that's just part of it. But I think it makes it fun, and it's all good. So, but definitely follow Josh. We were having some feedback problems there, so we had to kind of cut it just a little bit shorter than we typically would. But definitely follow Josh. You can find him on social media. Follow him on Facebook. Follow him on Instagram. He didn't, it was hard to hear him at times during the report, but basically he's hunting a really nice deer, a couple nice deer there on public land in Iowa, and that's where he finds. He's going to find himself most of this season. So keep following his story both on his own personal social media pages on Instagram and Facebook, but definitely follow his story on the Midwest Whitetail Daily, also the Midwest Whitetail Weekly. And you can obviously you'll see what's happening for him and everybody else on the Midwest Whitetail team as well. And again, we've said it a million times, but if you haven't downloaded the Realtree 365 app, go to iTunes and do that. Go to Google Play and do that. Whatever your device is, go and download the app. Get it because it's got a lot of really good content on there, from Whitetail TV with Bart Goins earlier to Midwest Whitetail with Josh Parks and others. We've also got Pay Dirt, Slade Priest, who we had on last week with Realtree's Hunt United, as well as Pay Dirt himself too. And then we've also got some other stuff. We had Michael Pitts on a couple weeks ago. Pit Stop. That's one of the funniest series on digital content, on digital hunting content. So, it's some of the funniest stuff that you're going to find online when it comes to hunting. And he does it in only the way that Michael Pitts can. So definitely check out his series as well. There's about 10 or 12 different series on there that you should definitely go check out. But you got to download the app, and it's free. So we've got some good reports from everybody across the Southeast, Northeast, and Midwest, and Northwest. We're going to be going back to Mr. Mayteen here and getting the rest of his report. Patrick, I'm not able to send you an invite right now, but I'm sure if you get that pulled back up here momentarily, we'll be able to get you. While we're waiting on Mr. Mayteen to get it ready to go, I am going to jump back into the comments and see if we have anything from you guys. And like I said, I'm going to take this as a moment to remind you, make sure that you participate in these reports, because this isn't just our show. You know, this is a tailgate party. This is where we come together, and it's a hunt camp. So you throw your comments in the comment section. If you have your own reports on what's happening in your neck of the woods, tell us where it's at and what it is, and we'll basically give your rut report here on the live feed. And if you also have questions or concerns, you know, you want to know what the deer are doing in your neck of the woods, drop it in the comments. We will answer your questions as well. So I don't think we have any other questions or concerns. I'm going to try to get Mr. Mayteen back on. Yep, there he is. We're going to get our report from the southeast region. Hey, Patrick, how are you?
We're back.
Tell us what's.
Sound like a
There
spaceman.
you go. Tell us what's happening in the southeast. Excuse me, in the southwest region.
So Texas, West Texas.
Had a momentary freeze. A Mayteen.
Lines are. Oh, how much of that did you catch? But the reb lines are extending, becoming much more noticeable. They're still seeing 2 to 4 year old bucks are still kind of hanging out with one another, tolerating each other for sure. The older bucks, the 5.5 plus year old bucks are breaking off, have broken off, become very solo. They're still having really good action on the on their feeders. So you know, still this is going to be a really good weekend. They've killed some really nice bucks in that part of the world this year. So I'm talking like east of Lubbock up to Post and that part of the world. I know one guy's already killed a booner. They've killed some really nice, like 150, 160 bucks. So the antler growth this year in that part of Texas was exceptional. I think across Texas, but especially over there. Now moving down to Central Texas, my good buddy Ronnie Parsons. This is down by San Angelo. I used to hunt there when I was in college. He said the word is it's hot and dry, which I'm hearing a lot in Texas. Not as much in West Texas or Northern Texas, but definitely Central Texas, hot and dry. The mature bucks are showing up at the feeders, showing up on cameras fairly sporadically, mostly at night. Though last weekend they did kill a 152 down there. That is a big buck for that part of the world. So things are definitely picking up. Kind of the same thing, same news. The bucks are still kind of tolerating each other, except for the very oldest. But they are seeing some deer on camera that they'd kind of lost since September. So things are ramping up a tad. Moving down to South Texas, I'm talking to Mike Stroff. He's a Realtree pro staffer. He's an outfitter. He's got the Savage TV show. So they've been having really good movement down in South Texas despite the warm weather. They did have a little cooling spell, which down there probably means it got down to 70. But it's he said right now the absolute key is food and water, because it is so dry. And he recommends, and I would say this is probably good advice all across Texas. He advises sitting on water. He says that, you know, a couple of their ranches, he said they literally can sit on the right water hole or windmill and see every buck in the area. They're hitting those water holes hard in the evenings. And I know when I've hunted drier parts of Texas in the past, when I was going to college down there, like Iran and Ozona area, we hunted water even when it was cold. I mean, sometimes there would be skim ice on the water and the deer were still hitting it. So when it's hot and dry like this, leave those corn feeders alone for the rut and go sit on some water. I mean, it's kind of hard to pull away from your corn feeder when you have so much time and money invested, but water is really going to be the thing if it's hot and dry in your part of Texas. Now talking to KC Smith down in eastern Texas, he said they had a pretty decent cold spell. They had a little spike in deer activity, but it's turned hot again. It's in the high 80s. Their bucks over there in East Texas are still in bachelor groups at this point. He's seen no scrapes, very few rubs, so things just really aren't happening there. East Texas seems to be kind of like up here in the Northwest. Things just happen a little later than the rest of the state, except for South Texas where things happen quite late. But he said, no scrapes. He said the white oaks are still holding their acorns. He said, so that really hasn't kicked off yet. But he expects things in the next week or so to really get going. Again, West, Central, South, definitely be in your stand or blind this weekend. East Texas sounds like kind of the rest of the whitetail world and probably lay off this weekend. Doesn't sound prime. Now moving east over to Oklahoma, talked to Eddie Claypool. Eddie Claypool is one of those, hardcore blue-collar bow hunters that's as successful as anyone I know. He's starting to see some of the first scrapes of the year. He's in northeastern Oklahoma, by the way. So starting to see some of the first scrapes of the year. Definitely action is picking up on the cameras, but still a lot of nighttime movement. But this weekend's supposed to cool down in that part of the world. And he, according to him, he says the next week or so is absolute prime time to kill a buck that you've been patterning during the year. He said he prefers this time of year because you can still get on that buck that you've patterned well before, they just hightail it for the hills for the rut. Things are a little more predictable. Colorado, cooling off this weekend. Should be a really good weekend in Colorado. Are you still with me? Okay. Yeah, the bucks are still running together, still tolerating one another. No interest in does at all. Although the guys I'm talking to have seen some non-aggressive sparring, just kind of shoving each other around to establish pecking orders. But food's definitely the key right now in Colorado. When we're talking whitetails in Colorado, that's going to be the Eastern Plains. So the cut corn, the milo, the alfalfa fields. But definitely going to be a super good weekend. It is cooling off. Arizona, New Mexico, as far as I know, there's nothing going on right now as far as any open seasons. There could be a youth season, but as far as I know, there's no seasons open right now. So, I always kind of considered this scouting season in New Mexico. The cool thing about Cow's whitetail or Coues deer is that they're extremely nocturnal. They're extreme homebodies. I've killed Coues deer where all I had to go on is I found a shed in a canyon head and killed that buck 3 or 4 months later. So unlike, elk in particular, scouting is really productive for Coues deer. If you actually lay eyes on a buck, he's going to be there even as far away as January. So the weather's nice. It's pleasant to be out. I just always, when I live down there, I use this time of year for really hardcore scouting. Kind of map out your vantages that you're going to use later, your routes in and out where you can get to those vantages without kicking deer out of vital pieces of habitat. And like I said, the weather's just really nice. It's going to be cold in the morning, but it's pleasant during the day. The deer will be moving fairly decently early and late. And of course, you can find those bucks bedded during the middle of the day. But if I was down there and I had a Coues tag later, I was planning on hunting archery season, I'd be out this weekend doing some glassing, checking things out.
Good deal. Is there anything else that you can share with us there from the Southwest?
That's pretty much the story. And again, I can't emphasize enough. If you're in Texas or even some of these other states and you're hot and dry right now, hit that water, leave that corn feeder for the rut, and set up a pop-up blind on a stock tank, or I have taken ratchet straps and 2x4s and ratchet strapped tree stands up into windmill towers before in Texas. So it's even if it's super cool in the morning, I've sat in the mornings too and had really good luck, but the evenings are generally the best.
Good deal. Well, thank you for the reports there in the Northwest and Southwest. As always, super beneficial, helpful advice for our deer hunters out in the western part of the world. We look forward to talking to you next week. I know we'll have more information from you then. Things are going to change a lot, and things are going to start changing more rapidly here as we move deeper into October and the first parts of November. I expect things to be much different for everybody, regardless of the region, by this time next week. And then obviously even more so by the week after that, with the exception of the Deep South and Southeast. But thanks for your report tonight. There was a lot of solid information I think our listeners out there are going to really benefit from in the next few days. And we look forward to catching up with you next Wednesday night.
See you next week.
Thank you. See you. All right, another great report from our mountain man, Patrick Mateen. He's out there in the Northwest and Southwest region. He actually hunts both regions, and that's why we have him report on both of them. We report from the regions that we live and hunt in, and obviously, as we've always said, we get information from other people too. So it's not just our own intel and our own knowledge and our own reports and insights. We're touching base with different people throughout the region. We have resources in every single state, and a lot of times multiple sources in every single state. And obviously we touch base with our wildlife agencies and DNRs. They provide a lot of really valuable information that we rely on each week too, and it's just a great resource. We hope you guys will join us again next week. Today and throughout every episode, not just today's, but every episode is brought to you this season by Thiessens. Definitely go check out their website. They are a direct-to-consumer business, so you can go to their website. There's a link in the description of this live feed. Go check that out. Also use the Realtree codes that are present there. That'll save you a little bit. And definitely check out all the products that they have. They have a big list of products that I think you guys will like. But definitely go check out Thiessens. And I really want to touch, as we did at the beginning of the episode, the base layer. It's that time of year. So definitely check out their V1 Polar Weight base layer series. And obviously check out their midweight and heavyweight stuff too. We're kind of past the lightweight gear for most hunters throughout the country. There's a little bit of them of hunting left with lightweight gear in the Deep South and Southeast, but for the most part, for the rest of the country, we're into the midweight and heavyweight stuff. So go check out the V1 Whitetail Midweight series as well as the V1 Whitetail Heavyweight series. Go check out all of that. It's in you can follow the link in the description to see all of their products. Again, they're direct to consumer, and I have to say they have some of the best prices in the industry. The quality compared to the MSRPs for each of their products is really impressive. So go check out Thiessens, check out everything they have to offer. We will see you again next Wednesday night. Again, we started a little later than we typically do. This evening we were waiting on some of our reporters and guests to get out of the woods and get into somewhere where they could basically join us on this live feed. So we started about 30 minutes late tonight, but we typically begin every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and if you're out there on Mateen time, it's out there. It's about 5 o'clock. So, but we look forward to sharing deer camp with you again next week, because that's what this is. We're sharing camp with you. This is a really conversational, laid-back, easy-going thing, and it's just as much your report, if not more so, than ours. So please, always, when you join us, drop comments in there, not just questions, not just concerns, not just want to know, when you want to know what's happening in your neck of the woods. If you know what's happening in your neck of the woods, we want to know that. So if you have a state or a region or a county that you are comfortable with putting in the comments, do so and tell us what the deer are doing in that part of the world. But until then, until next Wednesday night, we hope you have a great, great weekend. As we talked about, it's pretty much, a sit and wait for everywhere except for the Northeast, the Southeast, Midwest, Northwest, Southwest. It's best to kind of hang back for now, except for parts of the Southwest. Mr. Mateen said there were some good spots down there, some good weather and some good opportunities down there. But for the Northwest, the Midwest, the southeast, basically 2/3 to 3/4 of the country. This weekend is kind of be the time to kind of pull the reins back just a little bit, kind of wait and ease off the deer. If you're going to hunt, hunt the fringes, hunt the edges. Don't get too far in there. Don't hunt your best stands. Just kind of wait and let things unfold. And then hopefully by the following weekend, a week from this Saturday, things will be a little bit better conditions-wise. And obviously, as we get deeper into October and get closer to November, things are going to naturally get better anyway. So until next Wednesday night, good luck this weekend. We hope you have a great hunt. Again, have a blessed day, and we'll see you next Wednesday night.